All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for joining us from all around the world. We're happy that you're here with us today. We're excited about this Guesty virtual meetup. We're going to be discussing the power of exclusivity and loyalty. So, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Dave Angotti. I'm the chief evangelist here at Guesty. But today is not about me. It's about my good friend, Travis Wilburn. Travis is many things to this industry, but what I want to start out by saying is the people that we put in front of you are people that we trust, people that we know well, and Travis definitely meets this standard. I've known him for, I believe, almost a decade now. This month, in the month of June, he and I found ourselves on the top of a mountain in the middle of the night together. So these aren't just anybody that we find out on the street that we bring to you. These are people that we know well, that we trust, that we have had deep conversations. Those deep conversations lead to this idea of, hey, we want to bring this message to our Guesty users. So Travis is the founder of the 100 Collection, which is a curated network that's representing almost 100 destinations, premium vacation homes, best in class, local property managers. And that kind of brings me to my point that he's this advocate for independent vacation rental managers. He cares deeply about helping the property managers succeed in an era of OTAs and industry consolidation and competition. And he's doing that by really empowering local operators on things like direct bookings, local influence, and loyalty. In addition to 100 Collection, he is also the managing partner of Stay Charlottesville, and he has a whole variety of businesses, whether we're talking boutique hotels, event centers. He has his hands in restaurants, wine tours, even the local convention visitors bureau. His business has all of these different touch points that ultimately drive loyalty. So we're going to have a fascinating conversation around this, and I can't wait to do that. But before we do that, I do want to give you an idea of how things are going to run. We're starting with a few opening words, and then we're going to dive straight into the Q&A with Travis. So before we start talking about loyalty, I did want to introduce Guesty to any of you who do not know what we do. At Guesty, we provide short-term rental hosts and property management companies with the most comprehensive set of tools that you need to operate your business. Our goal is to empower you to bring in more bookings and create better guest experiences and ultimately have a thriving business. Now, there's a lot of big numbers here on the screen, and they might look impressive, but why does $410 million or 16 global locations actually matter to you, a Main Street business? And it's because these numbers mean that we can deliver you better distribution, AI, tools for higher ADRs, better accounting and operational efficiency. At the end of the day, these numbers aren't about us, but about you and your business. So whether you're just getting started with 1 to 3 properties or at the other end of the spectrum with hundreds of properties, we have a solution that's tailored for your business, both today and in the future. Okay, so we recently had a poll about how you stand out in a crowded marketplace. The short-term rental marketplace has matured, which in some areas that's a good thing, but in others it means like, hey, we have market congestion now, we have new competition now, owners might be more likely to churn. There's all these new complexities to our business, and there's all of these things that we're expected to really understand, but one of them really popped out, and it was the loyalty factor. And so how do we actually develop loyalty with our guests? This is going to be the topic today, but the ways that are really streamlined and just cut and dry. If we can make a guest feel like they're part of something, if we can delight a guest with surprises that they aren't expecting, good surprises, and if we can basically give them the opportunity to book properties at better prices or ahead of schedule or all these other things, ultimately the guest feels like we're investing in them and they'll invest back in us and our business. But it gets much more complex than this. And that's why we brought the leading expert in the industry, Travis Wilburn. to the call today. And so I'm going to go ahead and welcome Travis here and kick us off with a first question for you, Travis. We're just going to dive straight in. So the 100 collection is built on loyalty. It's built on trust, standards, and premium guest experiences. How does loyalty play into the creation of brand? Like, where does loyalty fit into brand?
So, hey, thank you for having me. This is definitely exciting and love being with you here, nice and relaxed versus on top of a mountain in the middle of the night running 12 miles straight up with headlights. A little bit easier. That being said, the loyalty is absolutely the heartbeat. It's the foundation of how the 100 collection was built. One of the things I love to answer this with is I get out of the vacation rental space in a heartbeat. Dave, you and I had to go travel to Tel Aviv for work a couple of years ago, and we were coming from the US, and you said, "Hey, I'm going to go fly United, jump on this plane with me." And I said, "Absolutely not. I'm going to fly Delta." Because I knew Delta was going to take care of me. I was going to get a better seat. I was going to get the lounges. I was going to get rewarded. I was going to get points. And I wanted all of it, right? Because I wanted to keep my status. And I never necessarily looked at the price point. I just knew that Delta was going to take care of me, simply put. And that was the foundation of loyalty. And so in the vacation rental space, we've been dealing with OTAs for quite a long time. They looked very differently 15 years ago. They were just glorified listing platforms, right? Verbo, Air, 2010 Verbo, HomeAway, FlipKey, a couple of others. They were all pay-to-play platforms. They were you spent X number of dollars and you got your listing on the first page or what have you. Also in 2010, airlines and hotels were freaking out because they were losing their market share to online travel agencies. They started filling up the plane 50%. Kayak and Delta was freaking out. Marriott was freaking out. And there was a lot of strategy that was born out of those years to be able to bring the customers back directly into the platform. And a lot of that was based off of loyalty, whether it's the credit cards that we use, or the seats that we get on the plane, or the upgrades that we get at the hotels. A lot of that was born to bring the consumer back into the platform. And with the 100 collection, 80% of the groups that we work with get their own traffic through their own platform. They've been around for 5 years to 75 years. And nobody was talking about direct bookings in 2010. However, over the last 7 or 8 years, we've been talking about it because Airbnb hired Beyonce back for the Super Bowl to stay in a $10,000 a night Airbnb in San Francisco, and suddenly the brand started shifting and people started paying attention and started booking over here versus over here. And just like the hotels and airlines had to bring people back to their own platform, it's the same thing that vacation rental space is battling with right now is brand identity, how to build trust in a international market, if you will. And so that's what the 100 Collection's here to do is you'll notice when you go to the 100 Collection site, you don't actually book directly ever with the 100 Collection. You go directly into the partners' websites to be able to go book direct. What we do is we bring to light trusted brands that have been around, know what they're doing with hospitality standards, safety standards, and by all means, best represent the destination. The people best represent the destination. And then we find the properties as well. And so just
So I
in
want to stop
that,
you there.
yeah.
So I want to stop you because I think you said a couple things there that make sense. So you booked with Delta. I booked with United, even though we're good friends and we would have rather been sitting next to each other. We book with separate airlines to fly on a 14-hour flight, something like that, and then we reconvene overseas. And so the reason we did this was there was benefit to each of us, right? And on that same flight, there were people that inevitably also booked with Expedia and other OTAs and maybe people that code shared between airlines. So there's all kinds of things that impact where a traveler books, so whether we're talking a vacation rental, a flight, anything. And so I think this is an important discussion point. The the traveler may book on Airbnb and stay with us. That traveler is important to our business. They may
Mhm.
book with our own direct booking website, or they may come to us through a site like 100 Collection and then book on our site. But regardless where that traveler comes from, they're important to our business. So I do think that you would say that 100%. You want to
100%.
deliver. Okay. And so I think it takes a good mix to fill the plane or to fill the calendar. And the idea here isn't that so much that like Airbnb is bad or that Expedia, in the case of the airline, is bad. It serves a purpose. It's just that if you can drive direct consumers to your plane or to your vacation
Mhm.
rental, that may be better. Would you agree with that statement? Like you need both?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, people look at it. I think one of the unhealthy ways to look at it is I want to fill up my plane 100% with a platform. You need a great mix. And if you go look at the plane, if you have a plane ticket today and you're going to go fly in 5 days, and you can look at your seats, you'll see that the middle seats and the back rows are all empty. They're still available. And those are exactly the seats that are generally getting filled by the online agencies. And so then your respective airline is going to try to convert you back into consumer. Delta does it right now with free Wi-Fi. Join our loyalty program and you can have free Wi-Fi on this plane. They want to get your information so that they can then go serve you again and turn you into a more loyal customer. It is a process. It does not happen overnight. I did not choose Delta versus United overnight. But when Delta started landing planes upside down and everybody lived, then I was like, hey, this is my airline. I kid,
Okay,
but
so let's go back to
you get the
let's go
point.
back to the free Wi-Fi. Okay, you get on a Delta flight, you have free Wi-Fi. That is the hook, maybe. And what's the hook for a vacation rental operator, a short-term rental operator? How do they hook somebody that came in from Airbnb? How do you develop a loyalty program that makes that person come back to you instead of book again through the OTA?
Now, this is the crazy part to me is that the barrier or the hurdle for this is so low within our industry. So I want to pause for a minute. And one of the questions I always bring up to everybody as I ask, at least an American consumer, I say, if I give you $300 a night and you can stay in the Fairfield Inn, which is a Marriott brand, or the Ritz-Carlton, a Marriott brand, which one would you choose? And they're going to say the Ritz. And at 350, they're going to generally choose the Ritz. And at 400, and at some point, the price might break them and they go back over to the Fairfield. But all I mentioned was the name of a business there, right? But we know that Ritz is going to provide a phenomenal experience. And if something goes wrong at a Ritz Carlton, you're going to have five people there with champagne, pouring you glass, and you're going to wish something else goes wrong. Legitimately, right? And so with our industry, the biggest challenge is the barrier to entry is bar none. Anybody can list a property these days. All you got to do is have photography, a description, and access. And so, hospitality standards. What are you doing? How are you showcasing? Are you, nobody knows your property when they look at it on a platform or they look at it on your direct website. Chances are they're afraid to spend money with you because the level of expectations or trust has been relatively eroded for numerous different reasons over the last couple of years. And so, talking about those health and safety standards to ensure that they feel safe, talking about the communication and having effective communication with them, absolutely huge. The faster we respond, we know this at this point, but the safer they're going to feel. Nobody likes to spend 14 hours in a plane to get somewhere and then be locked out. It is not fun. And then they have to text and hope that you're going to send them the right code to be able to unlock that door. And then truth in advertising, I think one of the biggest challenges in the most recent couple of years is we have some really great photos within our space, but they're not necessarily representative of the actual experience. And so, recently I saw a beautiful aqua blue hot tub, and then the photo, the reality of it being looks like algae's growing here. That guest is not going to have a great time, and that guest is probably not going to come back to the platform that they booked on to choose to book again because they've got 2 weeks of vacation with at least the average American, and their trust has been eroded. And so, I think the most important thing to bring
Yeah,
loyalty
yeah.
into the
Can we stop
conversation.
there? Can we
Yeah.
stop there? Because if you don't have integrity in your marketing, which that's what we're talking about. When you put up photos that do not accurately represent your property, and I'm not talking like, hey, we have to use cloudy days to shoot photos. That's not what I'm saying. But your property should not look better in the photos than it looks on the best day in reality. And if it does, you have an integrity problem, which is a reputational issue, which is a loyalty problem. Because we can't have a loyalty conversation if we're disappointing guests at the most basic levels, which is trust. And so I think
Mhm.
that that is table stakes. And I think the door code working and the property not having a mist clean. And a lot of what we're talking about here is table stakes. But then back to your Ritz-Carlton, they've done something at the Ritz that has instilled processes and mindsets in every single employee on how to deal with these situations. I'll give you an example. We were just at the Ritz down in Miami last month. It's down there for a conference with Burma. And I walk in after a run. I didn't ask anybody for it. A bellman sees that I am hot from running out on the beach and hands me two ice cold bottles of water. No question, no like, hey, where could I get a bottle of water? He anticipates the needs and hands me the water. How do we create a culture within our company that's similar to the culture that produced that anticipatory solution to a problem that I didn't even raise? How do we do that as short-term rental operators and property managers?
I definitely think that we have to use data to be able to measure this, right? And so, what is our repeat guest bookings? What are those percentages? And then ultimately thinking about the fact that most of us live in our local markets and we're hyper local. And the ultimate compliment is how do I find that same experience that David and Gotti just gave me in Franklin, Tennessee, over here in San Diego? How do I find you? So think about it from that way. What can I do to deliver experience? That's where this industry is going, right? This is the thing that we've learned, especially in an oversupply. Well, I will argue oversupply. It's crowded. Demand is not exactly the same in all places. Some people are using properties purely for utility, but what we are seeing is that the more unique properties, the better design properties are outperforming the rest of the inventory. So great. You got that, then it's experience. How do you deliver that experience beyond just a head in a bed? And that's what you're talking about with Ritz Carlton, right? They predict the need. They're not asking, they're taking care of you. And that could be simple as a post-it note, or one of our partners. Love the guy. I think you know him well, Tom Goodwin with Mountain Laurel Chalets. Every one of their guests gets a video welcoming message. It takes them a couple of minutes. People give such a positive feedback because it's personalized, and it makes them feel welcome. And the old sales training, I forget what it might, how many times we're supposed to repeat the name, but just repeating the name of your guests in a conversation 3 or 4 times will actually make them feel more welcome. And so, small little tidbits.
So I love what you were just talking about with Tom. And here's this business that's been there 50 years that has guests that have come season after season after season. And he reaches out and does these highly personalized videos. I can go book on any OTA today, and I'm probably not getting one of those videos. And when Tom comes across a video and I see Tom talking to me and he's welcoming me to the destination and maybe saying something about my traveling party where he sees, oh, I'm bringing my dog with me. By the way, there's this trail just outside of Gatlinburg that's pet friendly and this restaurant has a good patio. And all of a sudden he's speaking to me in the same way that a friend would. I'm going to be loyal to that experience again in the future. And I don't I don't necessarily knowing Tom well, I don't necessarily think that's why Tom even actually does it. And so I think there's something to be learned there. When we focus in on the guest with just a true passion about caring for that guest, that is what actually drives loyalty because it feels much more authentic.
Standardize the back end, aka the cleaning program, the cleaning protocols, the housekeeping, and humanize the front end. And just like Tom, everybody on this call could easily ask a guest that books it with them, why are you coming to said town? And be prepared with that answer. If you have a bachelorette party, this is your recommendation. If you have a wedding party, if you have a birthday party or a family event, be prepared, humanize it. And anybody can do a 2-minute Loom video and send that and welcome those people and personalize it. That in itself will be far exceeding 90% of the other people that you're competing against.
I'll give an example too that I've talked about before, but there's a certain company that I am fiercely loyal to. And I booked an expensive reservation with this company. And on the first day in Kauai, they send me a message, how is everything with your unit? I respond back, it's great. I'm on the beach and I don't want to have a long text conversation. At first, I didn't even respond. Then they replied back with something that changed the way I view this company forever. And they said, if we had a magic wand and could wave it to make one thing about your stay better, what would that be? And that's a scary thing as a property manager to ask this question because you're basically asking, how do I deliver unreasonable hospitality, like is all the buzz right now? Give
Mm-hmm.
me the playbook to do that for you and your family. And I came back with, hey, I don't like the coffee maker in this unit, and I'm a bit of a coffee snob. And by the time I got home from the beach, there was a new coffee maker with coffee supplies in the property. And all of a sudden, I didn't care that this was a very expensive rental and that it might cost more than other rentals. I wanted to book with that property manager again. And so I think
Mm-hmm.
that there are ways, whether it's a video at check-in, whether it's a simple question that's simple to ask and really, really difficult from a logistical and operational standpoint to actually deliver the coffee maker and the coffee and everything else. But that's what makes the difference when it comes to loyalty, because it's those exactly like the one slide said, it's the unexpected surprises that really can drive loyalty in a lot of instances. So do you have any other tips like that text or the video offhand that you can give the audience here that's
Well,
tactical?
I think that it reminds me of what you just said reminds me of a near dear friend of both of ours who's now the CEO of Vacasa. And Steve Schwab loves to say the do to say ratio, right? They said very little and then they did. Think about it. A lot of us listen to guest feedback and then we do absolutely nothing. It's like, oh, we've checked this box, we got a review, whatever it was, and we're going to take no action from there. Um, Take an action, go above and beyond. It pays back. Pays back tenfold. We often talk about in the restaurant industry, there's this old axiom where the what is it? A bad plate of food we'll go talk about 10 times. A good plate of food we'll review once. We'll tell one person. So it's like we all know that word of mouth marketing is one of the greatest forms of marketing. And so if you can really deliver that experience with that over the do versus say, I think you'll be off by all means to the races of winning.
So one more thing quickly on this first section of loyalty is what role does guest feedback play in that long-term relationship? Obviously, we just talked about an example with me where I'm still loyal, or these people with Tom, but what role does that feedback play?
Well, I think the feedback is our North Star, bottom line. It's a trust building opportunity. And when a guest tells you something didn't go perfectly and you respond with action, not excuses, loyalty is forged. And so we constantly remind our own partners via the Hunter Collection, the way that we respond, the way that we go back to that Ritz-Carlton or that negative experience or what have you. It's all about how I think testing our team, like quite frankly, I love the challenge of when something goes wrong. Because it gives us the opportunity to actually see how our team performs and what we can do to go make it right. And so, again, I remind everybody within my world that the average American at least has 14 days of vacation, 2 weeks. So if they're going to spend it with you, take that very, very seriously, and do everything that you possibly can to make it right. So whatever that feedback might be, positive or negative.
Yeah, it's quite a responsibility when you think about that statement you just said. Some of the stats are like you go to work 20 days for every day you're on vacation with your family. And all of a sudden, it makes sense why these people get so angry when it's a rainy day. And then on top of that, the Wi-Fi doesn't work because their dreams just got crushed. They were trying to deliver this heroic experience for their kids, maybe. And then now they
Mhm.
can't do that. They can't be out whitewater rafting or hiking or the beach day that they'd hoped for. Maybe it's a ski destination, there's no snow, whatever it might be. And so already things are going south, and then the Wi-Fi doesn't work. And how we step up in that moment absolutely plays into the loyalty piece, I think, because otherwise it's going to color how they think of our destination and how they think of our company.
100%.
All
Entirely
right,
agree.
so exclusivity. Typically, people think luxury, like high-end finishes, very expensive homes, high ADRs. I want to go a different direction with that. How do you
Mhm.
create exclusivity when it's not necessarily luxury finishes? How do you do that?
So I want to start with luxury. So I'm confused. I don't even know what it means. We often define it. I've seen numerous different people define it, and I've never heard the same definition twice. And luxury in Cape Cod is very different than luxury in 30A. Both beach markets, one's cottage country, it looks like it's the Norman Rockwell painting, and the other one's more modern, typically speaking. We talk about curation. We want to see that properties best represent the destination defined by that destination and that they create these aha moments. You were just talking about how the family vacation might get ruined on a rainy day. One of the properties I most recently stayed in, remember the name, Whaletopia up in um, on the Oregon coast here. Whaletopia sits right there on the ocean, and it downpoured like a hurricane for 3 days in a row. Yet when we were in that property, there were games, there was this beautiful fire. I actually never wanted to leave the house. It was that awesome of an experience. It was an aha moment. Um, Everybody was taken care of. Everybody had something to do. We weren't left like, I can't wait to get out of this house. I wanted to stay in the house, right? And so most people want what they don't have. 80% of America probably lives in a very familiar home, an apartment, a cookie cutter, or whatever it might be. They want something that they don't have. We always long for something more. If we have this car, no, we want that car. So when you look at the properties that you're bringing on, um, you can look at them, especially again, we were talking about this a little bit earlier. If you look at them from a curation standpoint or a utility standpoint, I don't look at it from a utility standpoint anymore. That's what Fairfield in. It's utility. It's a head in the bed. How can we bring great properties that literally you do not want to leave? That looks different in every destination because we go to different destinations for different reasons, right? Orlando does a really good job of making these homes that look like Disney World, and it's all geared around the children and it professional design and games, and I mean it's a fairy tale living there, right? Or 30A, you've got your cold plunge, your sauna, you're right there on the water. None of these things, by the way, well, I shouldn't say that they're not expensive, but a cold plunge, which is one of the fastest growing trends, at least within the US, or sauna. These aren't little like they're not that expensive amenities to be able to add to a property that then sets your property apart very, very quickly. And so there's a lot of different things that you can add to just an average home to make it a curated property or a more exclusive property, or to create aha moments, which is really what I think our industry should be about.
I think a lot of exclusivity comes down to really understanding our destination in a way that we can show that destination to others and that they wouldn't have that understanding without that relationship to us. And especially as I think of people that are on the ground in their destination, like I live here in Franklin or you're in Charlottesville, and then that understanding you get of your own town, the things there are to do there, the things that you can gain access to because you come through me.
Mm-hmm.
That's exclusivity in my mind because you can book with somebody else. And so I think back to the Smoky Mountains where I used to operate, and we had this thing called synchronous fireflies there. You can only see it in two spots of the entire world, and it's only a week or two out of the summer. Tens of thousands of fireflies at dusk are blinking individually, and then all of a sudden they start to blink together. And it's really a sight like no other sight. And it has so much publicity around it now. They have a lottery for these tickets. So it's
Mm-hmm.
difficult to get tickets to go see this. And the lottery fills up, like, and they won't even take more entries. And then it's something like one out of 100 odds of getting selected. And then you wanted to come see them and you didn't get to. So one of the things we did a while back was my good friend Clayton's a tour guide. He runs Smoky Mountain Guides there, and I was talking with Clayton, and he was laughing because he's like, people think you can only see it in this one area, but we can see it in all these other areas too, and people just don't know it. And so I asked him if he would be willing to guide people to the other areas, and he said, "Yeah, of course." And so then we worked with Clayton and Smoky Mountain Guides to take people to see the synchronous fireflies, even if they didn't win on the lottery. That connection point came through me. And that's exclusive. It doesn't matter if you're staying in a $200 a night property or a $5,000 a night property. It doesn't matter if the property itself is luxurious because you get access to Clayton through me. And so like that's how I think about exclusivity. How can we deliver the synchronous firefly experience, the experience in our destination?
I love it. So one of the things that I know you love and I certainly love is data. And the average resident to the locality that you're from will spend 1x. The average guest will spend 4x what you will spend. Know that fact. Then one of the things that we do, I'm going to take it in two different levels, but one of the things that we do at our local group, and we help a lot of our partners do, and a very quickly growing trend where a lot of money is getting invested, is private social clubs. And so private social clubs are usually aimed at the residents of the local market. It's a pay to play. You're only allowed to come into our club if you have if you're paying. However, those clubs generally need revenue from food and beverage. So all of our Stay Charlottesville guests, as long as they have a pass, a reservation, they get allowed into that private club for free because they're a value add to that club. Very successful program, not only for the club, but for us, where it asks the club, asks us, well, how can we get more of your guests? And I was like, well, build some more houses, I guess, or hotel rooms, whatever it might be, and we'll figure that out. But take that to the next level. Everybody has, generally speaking, a restaurant within their marketplace. Can you go find a way to get 20% off or 15% off something if you're recommending guests and say, hey, John Doe, because you're staying with me, one of my favorite restaurants is ABC Group. They have the best nachos in the world. Bam. Tell them that I sent you. They're going to give you X number of dollars off. They feel great about it. You're building that exclusivity. And so it can come in a lot of different shapes and forms.
Ask for Sam at the bar. He's got a bottle of bourbon that's not up there. It's really good. Tell him I sent you, and he'll give you a taste. Like Sam at the bar doesn't care because he's going to get tipped well. The restaurant doesn't care because now you're going to run up a bar tab and a meal tab there. They'll put
Mhm.
those bottles under there if you send them enough people, and they'll make that person feel special that goes in. You can do this a million different ways. There can be off menu items that you have to try at this restaurant, or it can be the Firefly Pass, or it could be a photographer on the beach that will take pictures of your family for free. And then guess what you have now as marketers? You have pictures of them. You have the dates that they were there, and you think that if when we trigger an email out to them with a picture of them in the email, that it doesn't work better than just a picture of a random home. It absolutely will. This is persona-based marketing, 2 to 3x results. And so I think this is like awesome stuff. It's secret recipes that
I want to
aren't
throw
easy
another
to
secret.
implement.
The one of the things I've talked about for years, it just you reminded me of, it's one of my favorite little tricks that I do is I put wolf stoves in properties because predominantly every market I've ever looked at, the audience is 65 to 70% women making decisions, generally speaking. And when I look at that data, most people know what a wolf stove is because they have red knobs. Viking has a black stove, or sorry, black knobs. But when we put those shiny little red knobs, automatically the consumer or the guest sees that and they're like, that's a really nice property. That's luxury. Yes, I spent a little extra money for a stove, but I'm getting it back in my RevPAR or ADR. However, the funny part about it is, Dave, guess what? 90% of those people never touch the daggone stove. They go to the restaurant. They go out to eat. Nobody wants to work. And so you can create very easy packages just by partnering with your local businesses. And they generally will come with welcome arms or open with welcome arms.
All right. I know you share a lot about tactics on LinkedIn. So if you aren't following Travis on LinkedIn, make sure you start following him. But I want to talk about tactics that we're actually seeing that drive results today. And so
Okay.
I want to think about promotions specifically. What types of promotions do you run that will drive retention rather than just a one-time booking? So it feels like most are around one-time bookings because we need that revenue today. But if we're thinking bigger picture long term, what does a promotion look like to you?
Um, the so many variations here, but the generally when we're doing promotions within our group, we are trying not to discount. We are trying to package and we are trying to create offerings. And so we are figuring out other partnerships and things to promote, like, hey, this private chef is cooking at this vineyard and it's a really cool experience. Or, hey, we have these spots reserved at King Family Vineyards, which is a big polo field on Sunday. Come out here, join us. We've paid for a sponsorship and we would welcome you to come join so that we can shake hands and kiss babies. And so our promotions are geared not towards discounts, but to event specific and creating reasons for people to come join or to meet. Another one of the cool things that we've recently done, and you kind of alluded to it earlier on the call. We built our own private DMO called charlottesvilleinsider.com. It's intentionally called something different. It's our own private destination marketing organization, and ironically, we monetize it with hotels that pay to advertise on us. But we also have a bricks and mortar space where we feature nothing but local artists and local makers from around the marketplace, and some of them are quite well-known makers, and they have their baskets in the Smithsonian. But we promote events at that space to bring our guests in so that we can actually have a personalized experience with them, offer them wine, showcase what it is that we're doing to be a part of the local community and what have you. And so our promotions are not the typical promotions that you're probably going to see where, hey, book 3 nights and get the fourth night free. We're just not doing it.
Yeah. So I want to stop there for a second because like you're
Sure.
you're you're hitting on the crux of this, which is there's only a few ways to create demand. And you can create demand through making something more desirable where everybody wants this thing and maybe it's limited or scarce, or you can create it by getting in a race to the bottom on price. And what we're talking about here is all of a sudden, when you go to the vineyard, which I've been to the one you alluded to, and you have the private chef cook for you, which I've had that experience, you don't just want that experience one time in your life. You want that again the next year. Whereas if you book a property that was just over here based on the basis of price, and you find a restaurant on your own and you go have a good experience at a restaurant, now I can have that experience again with a different property manager. But the vineyard experience with the private chef and recreating that special moment I had with my wife in Charlottesville that day at that vineyard with that set of circumstances, I can only get that from Travis. And so now all of a sudden, when I'm trying to surprise her with an anniversary trip, I'm not going to go over here to the one that's cheaper and let her down after we had the private vineyard experience this past year. And so I have to come back to you because I can't let her down, because we have to remember the point of a vacation is to make somebody a better parent, a better spouse, a better person for a week to whoever they're traveling with. Oftentimes is the point of this. And so I love what you're saying there, because that's how you create demand rather than just falsely create a booking from price.
Correct. Make it special.
So okay, so as we think about this, how do we balance digital and paid ads to create the demand, whether we're using an amplification of local relationships or whatever we're using to actually amplify the end number of bookings? How do you think about digital plugging into that?
So people think I'm crazy, but we never use paid ads as a group. And we have had very limited success. I know a lot of people do it, and I know they do it very quite well. I came from a background of marketing, publishing, and a little bit of online. And I understood the value of an email address very quickly on about 15 years ago when I accidentally acquired a hyper local Groupon company in Central Virginia. We had an 80% open rate. And so I focus all of my energy on grabbing the customer information, knowing who that customer is, how to get a hold of that customer, and then making sure that I don't over market to that customer, but that I keep them coming back. And so, I right now, we've talked a lot about this in the past, but search engine optimization is huge. We've spent a lot of money on that, and now it's generative engine optimization, right? And so, what are the engines? What's Chat GPT reading? What is it seeing? How are you getting ranked there? And so, our efforts are spent on PR and trying to get published and have other groups that have strong online presence drive traffic to us. And so, I find ways to try to build mutually beneficial relationships and have those online assets, whether it's a vineyard in our market or even our Charlottesville airport has a link to my website in the footer that then ultimately drives traffic. I find ways to build relationships that create what I always call the spider web to be able to capture and ultimately bring them into a sales funnel. And so
Yeah, and that's the highest level of digital marketing in my mind, when you can create relationships that generate PR, which now generates positive stories about you and your brand versus just like hey, I paid for one click on one keyword one time. And when you have the positive stories, the relationships, the overall perception of the brand, the trust for the brand, that's what every generative engine and search engine's looking to amplify anyways. They're looking for that, whether we look at Google's original patents back from the very early days or how generative engines are ranking sites today. So you said something in there, though, that ties into a question we got from the audience from Eva. And you were talking about email marketing. And Eva had a question around communication, because you were saying you would regularly communicate with your guests. Well, how much communication is too much and how much is too little? And how do we engineer that into our workflows to where we aren't over communicating with our guests, really?
So great question. And it starts with making sure that you have an email that people want to open and read. And so oftentimes we see some record low open rates, and that's going to get you absolutely nowhere. And so having a good open rate is first and foremost. And so if you have content, which is the hardest part of email marketing, content that people want to read and see, and you can become a trusted source for that, that they find valuable, then you can send that once a week. You can send it twice a week, as long as your open rate doesn't diminish. That's the main thing that you need to be looking at. And uh, even going from whether it's emails or ChatGPT or a search engine or Google, it's all about the quality of content right now. It's all shifted, and no longer, a lot of you folks, you go, hey, I want to write a marketing page. I'm going to go throw it in ChatGPT and go post it. That's not necessarily going to work, from what I understand. And so, original content, valuable content. That's where people want to see the authenticity, and so does Google. So, two birds, one stone on that, I would argue.
Okay. Loyalty programs and short-term rentals today. We hear this word. When I think of a loyalty program, I think of Marriott Bonvoy. I think
Mhm.
of, the Delta Sky Miles, like we were talking about earlier. What are we seeing around loyalty programs right now for STRs, and what's being offered to guests? Are you seeing anything that's working today, or is this still a hole in the market that needs to be filled?
I, myself included, it's still a hole in the market. Loyalty, again, to me, is one of the greatest opportunities, and there's a race for it. You see some of the big platforms racing for it, but until we're able to ask the average consumer a loyalty program in the vacation rental space and have them say a name, we're all failing, I would argue. And so I can talk about the Delta program or the Marriott program or what have you. And so today, loyalty, it needs to be like, instead of like gamifying bookings, think about access. Think about early check-in or flexible cancellations or private chef bookings, or surprise upgrades, and just not a free night. I would argue that they may or may not ever use. But like if you are able to speak to that consumer via the email and say, "Hey, thank you so much for staying with us. Because you've stayed with us, next time, hey, this is what we can do for you." And whatever that might be, see if you can convert that guest, make sure that you can track that guest, to be able to track that loyalty. But ultimately, what I would argue is we need a loyalty program within our space that's tied to major credit cards and much more robust system where I'm able to use points, and that is far more complicated than the average user might be able to gamify.
That makes sense. And I'm thinking, is this like a chicken or an egg issue? Because you don't have like independent hotels in one city that have robust loyalty programs per se. You have these big nationwide brands. And so it could be something around maturity of the industry where additional consolidation will have to happen before these call it 2 to 3 loyalty programs start to become top of mind for every consumer in the country in the same way they are with hotels. So I think what you're saying makes sense. How do we give the experience that creates like a loyal tribe for our product,
Mhm.
really, that will come back time and time again? So that makes solid sense, I think, for now. Um, I wanted to ask you about the top trust builders versus trust breakers you've seen in the industry, because obviously that plays a huge role in repeat guests.
Trust builders, wow, local expertise. Absolutely local expertise. Clear communication, consistent standards, beautifully maintained properties. Make people feel great and safe. Know what you're talking about, local expertise. Hey, you just booked this property. That's absolutely incredible. 90% of people love coffee. The barista down the road, her name is Jane, and she makes the best cappuccino. Tell them I sent you. People absolutely love it. Breakers, inaccurate listings, poor response times, hidden fees, homes that don't meet expectations. One bad stay erodes trust within our industry, and I have done this countless times. I ask people if they've ever stayed in a vacation rental, and then I ask them how many times, and then I ask them, "Did you ever have a bad experience?" And 50% of the time, if they've stayed more than twice, there's been a bad experience. That sucks. So be a part of the solution and not the problem. And so help build trust. We definitely need to build it back within the industry. As we all know, during COVID, a lot of people jumped in the space. They may or may not have known what they were doing. And so building quality assurances, within your own property management company, I think is absolutely crucial.
We had a question here from Laurel, and I'll go ahead and answer this one. It's a little bit technical around sending emails. Do you have to have permission to send emails? And is there a way to grab the email with permission? So basically, what we're talking about here is not falling under spam, really. We don't want our brands to illegally send things. We can get fined for that. We also don't want people to get emails they don't want, that they didn't sign up for. So regardless of where you are, there are some laws that apply. GDPR is one of the biggest sets that applies. CCPA in the United States, which gets down to like California, but actually impacts really all of the states. Those are some of the laws here. But basically, anywhere in the world, you have to have permission to start sending marketing emails that are one brand to many. And so that's just something to be aware of. You don't want to be on the wrong side of that. You will typically go ahead and you will have that as part of the opt-in form where they're agreeing to that in the terms there. So anything you want to add to that one in particular, Travis?
No,
Okay.
you said that perfect.
Okay. And then there was a question around where you run promotions. Like if you were going to, they had a question about buy one, get one. You just kind of tackled that one and said you'd rather not run that promotion. You'd rather instead position an exclusivity type format where you have the wine tasting or whatever it might be. But where would you run promotions to fill up inventory? Would that be to your own email list, I think, is what you're going to come back with?
I would say my own email list in a heartbeat, or I would simply research through ChatGPT the top performing websites within the marketplace that are related to tourism and then I would try to figure out how I could get listed on those websites and be able to offer promotions over there. I am cheap at the end of the day. I do not like to spend money on PPC, pay per click. I want to find a way to take somebody else's 25,000 visitors per month to drive traffic over to my own individual platform in a mutually beneficial relationship, which is key.
All right. Well, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap up the questions here at this time because I feel like we've made it through a lot of these, and we could talk about this for the next 5 hours and not hit it all. I do want to mention that if you enjoyed what you saw today, that Travis is going to be with us at Guestival. And so Guestival is our half party, half business conference, really, really fun, festival themed conference. And we're going to host it in Mexico City this year, the #1 ranked travel destination in the world, according to the New York Times, the best cultural city in the world, according to Time Out magazine. So this is a fun spot for a conference. We're going to have the top OTAs there. People like Travis are going to be there, tech providers, along with some of the very biggest names in property management. We are going to have plenty of time for networking, along with sightseeing and once in a lifetime cultural experiences. But then we're going to bring a perfect blend of education and professional advancement to this conference as well. In addition to Travis and me being on that stage, we're going to see people like Steve Cano from Airbnb. We're going to have top minds from Elogio and Marriott Bonvoy, Breezeway, Steve Schwab from Costco. We're going to have an incredible lineup. So I would encourage each of you to go ahead and scan this QR code and get your tickets before it sells out. We have quite a few people coming, and it will be top notch. So don't miss your chance to get tickets. I look forward to seeing each of you there. Travis, I do want to thank you again for joining today. This was great, and we appreciate your knowledge sharing with our audience here at Guesty.
Thank you so much. Pleasure.